Hi, this is Aunt Hetty's Creative Home. In this video, we will be making ham balls, mashed potatoes, corn casserole, and fried apples for our first dinner. For our second dinner, we'll be making chicken noodle soup and an easy, crusty French bread that only takes an hour. Whether you are a first-time cook or a seasoned one. Let's get started on a no-fuss, nothing fancy, lots of fun video. You'll learn how to cook, menu planning, yummy recipes, and what's for dinner. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Let's see what today has in store. The first recipe we're going to make today are going to be my Grandma Jane's ham balls. And we always had these at usually Thanksgiving or Christmas, kind of as a second main dish. And they were my sister Emily's favorite. And she put them in this cookbook she made for me for Christmas one year. And that's the recipe that we're going to make today. So I started off by grinding some ham, and you can get ham already ground if you don't want to do it yourself. But I just took any kind of ham will do, and I just grind it down in my little food processor here. And you want it to be the consistency of like ground pork or ground beef. So I'm just blending it up here, and we're going to put that in a big bowl. And now we're going to add the other ingredients. We're going to use a pound of ground pork. And that ground ham should be a pound also. So you'll just want to put the two meats in there together. And then I also put in the food processor graham crackers. We're going to want a cup of ground graham crackers, 1 egg, and 3/4 cup of milk. We're going to stir this all together. You can just mix it until everything's all incorporated together. And we will go ahead and start rolling it into balls. You can make them any size you want. I'm going to get about 15 out of this. Usually I get 12 to 15. So these are probably about the size of, a little bigger than a golf ball. So I'm just going to get all of these rolled up. And they are kind of wet and a little loose. They're not real firm. That's normal. Now we're going to make the sauce that goes on top. We're going to put in a can of concentrated tomato soup, a cup of brown sugar, a tablespoon of mustard, and 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. And stir that up. And we're just going to put some on each meatball. Now these have a kind of sweet and tangy taste to them. Next up is going to be Paula Deen's corn casserole. I have a cup of margarine already melted in the bottom of the bowl. I added a can of cream corn, a can of regular corn that is drained, a Jiffy boxed cornbread mix, and also a cup of sour cream. And you're just going to mix this all together. There will also be cheese in this recipe, but it'll be added later on. So I'm going to spray baking dish, and I'm going to put the mixture in. And I'm just going to set those aside. And now I'm going to prep our fried apples. I've got 4 apples here, and there's 2 of us. So that kind of gives you an idea of the quantity. And I'm just going to peel these and cut them into little wedges. You don't want them to be very thick, and you want them to be approximately all the same size so they cook evenly. Now we got the oven preheated to 350, so we can go ahead and put in our meatballs and our corn casserole. I can almost smell it already. I took the corn out after 45 minutes, and I'm just putting a cheddar cheese mix on top, like so. I'm going to place it back in the oven for another 15 minutes. Those ham balls are still cooking. They need to cook for an hour. So I'm getting the apples going on the stovetop now while everything's finishing up the last 15 or so minutes of baking. I'm going to put some brown sugar in with our apples. I put about 4 tablespoons. Then I put in a generous amount of cinnamon. And I added in about a half a stick of margarine. And I'm just melting it all together. And then I'm starting the water for my potatoes. I just used packaged potatoes this night because everything else was kind of time consuming to make already. So I wanted to take a little bit of a shortcut with this. We really like the Idaho brand. That's the loaded baked potato is what it's called. And all you have to do is add that to 2 cups of boiling water. So I'll just put a lid on that and let it sit there for a little bit while everything finishes up. And here's what our casserole looked like pulled out of the oven. And the ham balls. Like I said, those 2 things together took about an hour to cook. And it's time to eat. Here's our plate of food. And it was so good. Now we're going to get ready to make our second meal idea. We are going to be making chicken noodle soup and homemade French bread. It only takes an hour, so it's a real easy recipe. We're going to start by getting our chicken ready. You can buy a rotisserie chicken and debone it if you prefer. I had some chicken drumsticks in the freezer, so I'm just putting them in a pot of water with some salt and pepper, and I'm going to boil them about an hour. You just want to make sure the meat is all cooked. And you're going to keep this broth when you get done. So I'm just going to remove the chicken into a plate and I'll let it cool down. While that's cooling, I'm going to start our bread. We're going to add 1.5 cups of warm water into a bowl. Next, we're going to add about a teaspoon of salt and then a tablespoon of dry active yeast, the Rapid Rise. We're going to let that sit for 5 to 10 minutes to let the yeast proof and start to bubble up. After that, we're going to put this on my stand mixer. If you don't have one, you can use your hands and knead it that way. You'll want to stir it in first, and once it starts to separate from the bowl, you'll knead it with your hands. So it's going to take between 3.5 cups and 4.5 cups of milk. Mine usually takes right about 3.5 cups. So I'm going to start by adding in about 2 of the cups, and then I'm going to slowly add in the other 1.5 cups. and you'll be able to see it'll start pulling away from the mixer bowl, and it'll start forming its own bowl in the center. The ball will start getting a little bit drier the more flour you use, and then you're going to want to check it, and once your hands don't stick to it anymore, you can pull it out. And I'm just going to shape it into a loaf, but I don't like putting mine in a loaf pan because I want this to be more of an artisan type French bread. So I'm just going to spray a cooking sheet and put the loaf on the pan. We're going to set the timer for 400 so the oven can start preheating. And then for 20 minutes, we are going to let the bread rise. I set mine on the stovetop so the heat from the preheating oven comes on. And then we're going to bake it for 20 minutes also. And here's our loaf coming out, all piping hot. I put 3 lines with the knife. I kind of cut 3 slits in that before I stuck it in the oven so that it could helps it let some of the steam out while it's cooking. And then I put butter over the top of it while hot just to make the crust not quite so crispy. So now that our bread is done, we're going to go back into the chicken, getting it ready for our soup. I'm just taking all of it off the bone. You'll just want to make sure you get the skin off first and then get all the meat off the bone. Next, I'm just going to use my hands and do it the old-fashioned way and get everything into small pieces that are bite-sized. You're just going to want them the size you would for a bowl of soup. All right, I put the meat mixture into the broth that was left that we cooked the chicken in. Now, if you don't have any of that because you used a rotisserie chicken or some chicken you had in the freezer, you can just go ahead and use some chicken broth. So I have some chicken bouillon here. You can't read it very well. So I had the broth from what I made. I had a little bit of chicken broth on hand, and then I'm going to make some with this chicken bouillon. So I put in 2 cups of hot water, and I put 3 bouillon cubes in because I'm going to probably add some more water later. And then I had this package of celery, onion, and carrots all chopped up already. We got these for free, and so I had stuck them in the freezer. So they already are soft. They're not really going to need cooked down very long. If you put in fresh, of course, you're going to need to turn on your water, let it boil, and just kind of cook those down till they're tender. Then I'm going to put in, not quite a tablespoon of garlic. I used minced garlic. You can use powdered garlic or, any kind you want. Then I'm going to put some thyme in. And a couple of bay leaves. You may notice on a lot of my items that I use for cooking, there's other price tags on them, and they're really pretty cheap. We get a lot of our groceries at the Amish stores that are close to us, and they really get marked down items. Some of them are dented like this package is, or have a missing label, and some just are close to expiration or expired. We've never had a problem with anything. Oh, sorry there. My dog wants to decide to say hi. Benny, that's enough. Now I'm going to add some more chicken broth. I believe I had about 3 cups left in this container. I'm going to stir that up, kind of see where I'm at. We're still going to need to add noodles to this, so you want to have enough liquid to cook those and to be enough broth to cover the noodles. So I added about 7 or 8 cups of liquid that I'm going to add. After it gets to a full boil, we're going to go ahead and put in some extra wide egg noodles. And I use the dry packaged kind like this. And I'm going to add about 3/4 of one of these large bags. We don't like a lot of extra broth with our chicken noodle soup, so it's going to be pretty full of stuff the best way. So I'm just going to let those noodles cook for 8 minutes, which is the suggested time on the back of the package. So I'm just going to keep that boiling. Pull out our bay leaves. I had 2 of them in here, so you want to make sure those get out and don't get eaten. After the noodles are cooked up, I'm going to add a little parsley to the top. Gives it a little extra flavor. It's smelling so good by now. And I'm going to start dishing it up. Getting some of our homemade bread buttered up. We're going to have homemade bread and soup on this chilly evening here in Iowa. And here's the finished meal. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll enjoy eating this and cooking it as much as I did. Please join me on our next video. Bye now.